Good afternoon. Welcome to a very special live edition of Focus on Rugby here on Walesonline. Wales coach Warren Gatland is in the studio ready to take all your questions. We've had plenty already, but please do keep sending them in throughout the show. Warren, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. First of all, been a while since we've seen you in your guise as a Wales coach. Have you been up to much?
I had a bit of a break after the Lions tour. I needed that. It was a full-on year, in terms of leading into that. People say, I wasn't involved so much with Wales, but it's, all the commercial stuff and the sponsors and doing that 2 or 3 dinners a week and trying to get round and look at players. So, and then the tour was, it was tough. It was full on, 2 games a week and reasonably stressful as well. So it was good to get a bit of a break, and now it's great to, ironically, come back to a little bit less pressure here in Wales. Normally the spotlight's really on you here, so I'm really glad to be back.
Okay, let's get on with the questions. As you know, there's 3 million or so Welsh selectors out there, all with their own opinions on the squad. Let's start with the first one, which is from Andrew in Bridgend, who says you've got a very tough call to make outside half for the coming internationals. It doesn't appear to be much between Biggar and Priestland at the moment. What will you be basing your decision on? Where are you in your thought process with that?
Well, I think you've got to look at Dan Biggar did really well last year in the Six Nations, and particularly just 2 or 3 of those games the conditions were pretty wet and it wasn't ideal to play a lot of running rugby, and he controlled those games exceptionally well, and he got confidence as that tournament went along. Reece Priestland is now back from injury, and I think he's had the last few games, some good games for the Scarlets. He's starting to run the game pretty well. His kicking out of hand's been good. So there's some real competition, with those 2 players, and then we're really excited about Reece Patchell, and we've brought him in to have a look at him in terms of giving him some experience in the squad. We know he's got some speed, he's a good kicker, he's got a lot to learn, and he's aware of that. So I think that opportunity and that experience, and with the squad, and particularly those Lions players, he went to Japan last year, and he's great. And then we've got the experience of James Hook, who's been playing a little bit at 15 for Perpignan, can cover us at 15 and at 10 and the midfield, and we want to see James perform well. I spoke to James a couple of days ago, and the great thing about the conversation that I had with him is that he's desperate to play for Wales, and that was exciting. I just said, the best thing about this conversation is that you're showing me a little bit of fight, and I didn't always feel that from him in the past, that sometimes he accepted the disappointment of being left out, but he really wants to play. And so I said, we'll come in and let's see that hunger, and let's not let some of those younger boys push you around a bit, and come in there and show that potentially you can be the boss as well.
Okay, let's stay on the selection theme at the minute. Couple of bouncers, couple of people here. First one, Pricey, saying, what has Lee Byrne got to do to earn a place in the squad? Playing week in, week out for Claremont, playing top level rugby. The other one, Samson Lee. Bobby here saying he's the inform tight head in Wales. Why is he not in the squad? Obviously, you might have seen Lee's reaction on Twitter to,
I did. To
not being.
A lot of people commented on that reaction, and I. Wasn't disappointed with that reaction at all, and that's understandable. And we discussed Lee and spoke about him, and thought his form has been excellent. And part of the remit at the moment is looking towards, or countdown towards, the World Cup. And if we were picking a World Cup squad tomorrow, there's a good chance that Lee Byrne would be in that squad. But we've got probably arguably one of the best fullbacks in the world in Lee Halfpenny, and another player whose form's been excellent, and Liam Williams as well. And so we definitely discussed Lee Byrne as an option, and how well he's been playing. Will he be around in 2 years' time for the World Cup? I'm not too sure, but it definitely doesn't count him out for future selection. Samson Lee is another one who's been playing well, and has been part of the squad in the past. And he's, again, we had a lot of debate, not just Samson, a player that we've got high regard for down the Scarlets, who's not getting game time as Roger Jones as well. So that's part of players that sometimes get the opportunity. And as I keep saying, and the great thing about being in Wales or anywhere is that selection is just a matter of opinion, and that's all it is. It's our opinion at the moment, but that doesn't take away from everyone having a right to their own views and creating debate, because that's what sport's all about, and that's what picking that Welsh team's all about as well.
Absolutely. Next one in from Mark, to do with the back row here. He says, obviously with Sam being named captain for the autumn, I'm sure it's likely you'll have him penciled in as the starting 7, but having seen him and Justin play in that game against England, particularly in the Six Nations, are you tempted? Can we expect to see them two starting a test match any time in the autumn?
Well, I thought both of them complemented each other really well in that last game, and we've got that option. We've got, and I think we should celebrate the fact that we've got 2 real quality 7s, and we've seen how the impact of the game in terms of players picking up injuries, and both those players have picked up injuries in the past, and yeah, it's a fairly tough position to be in terms of putting your body on the line. And so, you know, if Sam does pick up injuries, we've got Justin there, and vice versa, or we could play them both at 6 and 7 as we've done. So it does give us those options, and you know, rather than sort of sometimes having that debate about, you know, who's playing better or who should be picked, I think we should celebrate the fact that we've got 2 real quality 7s that can both do a great job for us if selected. The other thing too is we need to be mindful post Lions, you know, how we manage our players, and that's really important in terms of that countdown for the next 22 months before the World Cup. And it's not just the Lions tour; it's the 12 months beforehand. And I'm conscious that, you know, post every Lions tour in the past, as France have come out and won the Six Nations. So from that regard, you know, I need to make sure mentally I keep the players fresh, physically we keep them fresh, and so, you know, it's going to be how we manage that, and trying to put out a team that's good enough to hopefully go out and win the autumn internationals, but also make sure that we just don't flog the players, and we've got to look long term ahead in terms of making when we come in for the Six Nations, we've got players fresh and ready to go for the Six Nations too.
Does that mean, Warren, that you might see a bit more rotation in the autumn this year than perhaps in previous campaigns?
Yeah, I think so. There's a good chance of that,
yeah.
Because it's not just, you know, it's not everyone's in the same boat. It's just assessing individually every player. So some players had a really heavy Lions campaign. They've come back. They've had a break. They've played most games for their region. So yeah, we've got to work together with the player, with the regions, and so for one or two of them, I have no doubt that in the autumn we'll give some of our key players 3 or 4 days off in that campaign, just to get away from it, just to freshen up mentally. Yeah. They work pretty hard with us. Then they've got a couple of really important European games to play, you know, after the autumn as well in December, and again, it's not always the physical thing. Sometimes it's the mental thing, and how we keep them fresh mentally. And then, you know, when you get into December and January and the weather starts to pack in, and you're getting out and it's freezing cold, and you know, we come around for the Six Nations. You know, I'm conscious of wanting a squad to come in that are, you know, hopefully as fresh as they can be, because they've been looked after, not just by us but by the regions as well.
On that sort of note, Paul Jones from Port Talbot saying here that the toughest match of the autumn is first up, South Africa obviously. He says Wales are always slow to start a campaign and a match, so what are you doing to make sure they're on the money straight from the off? What can you do?
Well, that's always a challenge, you know, getting players in, and you've got 2 weeks, and the thing that we have is, over the last couple of years, we've got a lot of information now, and that every training session's videoed. Players are wearing GPS units and heart rate monitors and that, and the stats show us that, say, coming from a Pro 12 game to a Heineken Cup game, and then to a international game, and particularly and even against the Southern Hemisphere, there's a huge step up. And I'll give you just a really simple stat. I mean, I think players on average in a Pro 12 game cover about 55 metres per minute. That's the average. And then you go to a Heineken Cup game, and that might get to about 60 to 65, and then an international is up to 75 metres to 80 metres per minute. So for those players sort of coming up and stepping up for the next level, it tends to be a little bit of a shock. So we've got to replicate in trainings, you know, what they're going to expect when they play against one of the Southern Hemisphere teams. So that's South Africa or Australia or New Zealand. Now, the differences in speaking to the Southern Hemisphere is that the pace and the intensity of a Super Rugby match is very, very close, and sometimes even a little bit higher than the international games that the All Blacks are playing. So when they come into an All Black environment, they don't have to look at stepping up the intensity and the pace of training, is because they're already getting it week in and week out. And so for me, that's the big thing. I don't want South Africa sometimes to be a huge shock, and we've compromised ourselves in the past a little bit by, sometimes that first couple of weeks being a little bit of a physical sort of period in terms of that physical intensity of what they're going to get when they hop out on the field and making the decisions under pressure, and the game being a little bit faster, the ball being in play a little bit more longer than they're used to. But in saying that as well, we've got a group of players that have come back from a successful Lions tour, and it's important for us to have the focus on, I think the time is right to start saying, well, the expectation for November is important for the development of this team. Yes, we've done very well in recent years in the Six Nations, but to be honest, we haven't done as well as we should have in the autumn. And so I think we can, hopefully on both fronts sort of compete well and mix and match a little bit in the autumn, but also go out and perform, and be great to start first up against South Africa and get a good performance and a result and win and build on that confidence, because we need to psychologically have that sort of confidence and belief. And maybe in the past or in years gone by, we've talked about we're good enough to win, but did the players really, really believe that they were good enough to win deep down, or did the supporters or the public believe we were good enough to win? Because sometimes when you read things online, there's a lot of people out there who don't believe we're good enough. But and that's the thing, is if there's that confidence and belief in yourself and belief in the team, and that we're good enough to win, then I think mentally that has a huge impact on the expectations, and that's where this team needs to go. Start need to expect that we're good enough to go to that next level as a team, and hopefully sort of continually be in that sort of top 3, 4, 5 teams in the world.
Absolutely. Okay, a Lions and Wales related one here from Steve in Llanelli. Sean Edwards, he said Sean was obviously hurt by not being named as part of the Lions coaching staff. Has your relationship with him been damaged at all?
Oh, I don't think so. I know how disappointed he was missing out on the Lions, and it was a incredibly tough call for me to make, and I made it personally, a little bit selfishly, because it was a chance for me to bring in someone that I hadn't worked with in the past, in terms of Andy Farrell, who was well regarded by anyone that I spoke to. It doesn't take away from the respect that I have as Sean as a coach, and so it was good from that aspect to work with someone else. So I've got a huge regard for Sean, but I think there's a little bit of I suppose a part of me that looking long term, knowing that Andy Farrell could do a good job, but also if you're thinking, you knew what the World Cup pool was, and we're going to have England in our pool, so looking long term, is that it potentially gives me a little bit of an insight into England and the preparations as well. So that was
allowed to admit things like that?
Well, that was a little bit of the cutting side of it. You don't admit that. And that's probably more of a reflective decision, saying, well, what happens afterwards, because there's no doubt that by us going on the Lions, we've given away from a coaching setup and a backroom staff a huge amount of information and IP as well. So it's always nice to try and get something back as well. So look, it was tough. And the thing about Sean is he's been a professional sportsman since he was 17, and he knows that at times, even though you don't always agree, he respects that sometimes tough decisions are made or need to be made, and so the way he conducted himself, even though he was disappointed, was what I expected, and he texted me on the tour and wished me good luck and said well done, and we've caught up a few times since there, and had a drink together, and so I'm just hopeful that, and I'm confident that relationship will continue to flourish and be as good as ever.
Okay, another quick Lions one before we move on to other matters from Mike Jones. You probably knew this one might be coming. Will you be sending Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood a signed copy of the third Lions test for Christmas? What do you make of all that?
Yeah, well,
have the Irish public forgiven you?
I don't know. I've got to go there tomorrow evening. I'm doing and on TV over there for their late show. So I think Brian O'Driscoll was on there last week. In fairness to Brian, when we went to Downing Street and met the Prime Minister and that, he came up and gave me a Christmas card, and I thought it was a nice touch. And obviously, look, he was disappointed with the decision that we made, but we felt collectively as a coaching team it was the right decision. It doesn't mean that you bask in the glory or feel vindicated, because it was such a tough call to make, and particularly someone who's been regarded as a legend in the game in the Northern Hemisphere. I mean, I gave him his first cap as a 19-year-old, and then to be the first person to drop him I found that quite ironic, really. So, but it doesn't mean that as a coach, even afterwards, that you don't go back and question the selection and still ask yourself, was it the right decision that we made? We felt at the time that if Jamie and John had been fit for the first test, that potentially would have been the combination. I thought Jonathan Davies had an outstanding tour, particularly against New South Wales, and we played centre. And then Jamie as well, and then that combination too. So Brian, I'm sure, would have done a great job for us, but it wasn't about sentimentality. It was about what we thought was the best team, and the mandate that I was given was to do whatever it takes to win a Lions series, and that was the most important thing in terms of what I was told. With regard to Keith Wood, I think he's let himself down, basically. I think, and that's for him to have to deal with. I think that some of the things that he said are a little bit, rather than respecting that coaches make decisions and whatever, he's probably made it a little bit personal, and that's probably a reflection of him as an individual. And if the Irish have a great saying, he's a Mayfainer, and so and that probably sums him up a little bit.
What does that mean?
Well, you can find out.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I thought it might not be clean enough for a family.
You'll have to do some work, won't you?
We'll look that one up, actually. Okay, onwards then to the autumn. Ian Jones asking, which of the young Welsh players in the squad have caught your eye, particularly in the recent Heineken Cup matches? Who are you excited about that you've named in the squad? There's a few new caps in there.
I think Emma Phillips has done really well for the Scarlets at hooker. I think we've been impressed with him. The two Cardiff midfielders are quite exciting. Corey Allen, we see something in him a little bit, and particularly last year watching him in Hong Kong with the Sevens, I thought he was outstanding over there. Eli Walker's has had a good start. He's dangerous. Probably in the last couple of games hasn't had the most opportunities playing for the Ospreys in terms of room to move and that. So in terms of the squad, Rodri Williams as well. So at Nines, we're pretty excited about the youngsters. But the thing is, we've brought some youngsters into the squad. We've made it a little bit bigger than normal in terms of some players might not get some game time, but it's about us having an opportunity to assess them and bring them into the national squad to give them a feel of it. Some players will get a chance, perhaps against Tonga, maybe on the bench. So we've just got to mix and match and get that balance right. And for us, it's like, again, it's assessing some players and giving them the chance to come in and show us what they've got in good company too.
With the injury, Warren, to Alex Cuthbert, does Liam Williams come very much into that wing equation? Is there any way, possibly either you might even look at Lee Halfpenny on the wing? Obviously he's done so well at fullback, but just looking at those options there.
Yeah, we spoke about that, and we think at the moment, like, Liam Williams is probably a better fullback than he is a winger, and we know Lee can play there, but then are you taking one of the best players in his position in the world and moving him? So that's a debate. We spoke about, and maybe we'll look at it. There was Hallam Amos, Harry Robinson, Tom Pridey's has done pretty well too. so they were options for us in terms of Jordan Williams too. So I mean, there's a little bit of talent around, but we just felt at the moment with James Hook can come and play fullback for us as well too. So we've got some options. One of the things that I would like to do, and if given the opportunity, and we haven't had the chance to do that, is at some stage we wouldn't mind looking at Jordan North in the centre too. We spoke
in the Lions too, didn't
he? He went there for a little period, and so I think, given his age, that he's come in and played on the wing, be another good string to his bow. How do we give him that chance to potentially play there, give us cover if it's required in the future, and give us some other options too. So it's how we try and facilitate that is going to be the challenge for us.
Yes.
Emmy are just asking you about the centre position, saying Wales always seem to play better when Jamie plays. Can his replacement truly fill the gap left by him, and do you have to change your game plan as a result of his absence? Will it be Scott Williams? He's in fine form.
Yeah, I think Scott Williams has been the the form player so far of the season. I thought he's been absolutely outstanding, and it's great that his involvement in the last few years. Now he's going to get a chance, hopefully, to start. We've picked a couple of the other young players to come in and look at creating some depth for us. We know what Jamie can do as a centre, but the challenge for Jamie is that, and I've spoken to him about this, is that in the last 2 or 3 years, you've been very, very effective at what you've been able to do, but you need to start adding some other aspects to your game, some other subtleties in terms of the offloads, putting players into a bit of space, developing his kicking game, and probably the best example of that was someone like Nonu. He was very direct when he first came into the All Blacks, but if you look at his game now, he's developed a lot of aspects of his game and given himself an all-round game. And I think for Jamie, that's the focus for him within the next 2 years up to the World Cup. That just not considered as just a one-trick pony, and that he's got other parts to his game that can add to the squad, give him the variation, give the team the variation, because it's important that all players in the squad continue to improve and develop and make us more competitive and stronger as a team.
Okay, quick political one now from Robert on Twitter, who says, what kind of involvement do you have in the current discussions over European competitions, and what are your preferences? I'm sure the answer is not much, and you're thankful of that to the first part. What do you make of it all? And obviously the news we had this morning, the WRU offering to sort of take on the contracts of the top stars who are out of contract at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think, look, we all want Europe, we all want a strong Europe. My ideal preference would be to stay with the 24 teams, and I can understand the English, and I think other players have said this as well, English and French frustration in terms of meritocracy and getting into the competition, and maybe the Pro 12 needs to adopt that, and I think there's definitely merit in that. But for all of us, I think is trying to get that sorted out, because if Europe is sorted, it gives the clubs or the region some certainty in terms of financial security going forward, and hopefully being able to fulfil and give players contracts. We've always said the preference, and ideally want to keep players here in Wales as we can. And I think from the Welsh Rugby Union, they're prepared to step in as a stopgap at the moment, that if the regions aren't prepared to offer some of our top players contracts, then as a union we are, because we want to try and retain their service. Even if we leave it go for 2 or 3 months, the players can't keep hanging on and waiting for an offer from their regions, and if we're not careful, we're going to potentially lose a number of players. So what we're saying to the players and the advice, before you sign anything and make a decision, make sure you talk to us and give either the club or the region or the union an opportunity to sit down and talk to you and potentially put something forward to you, because some of those players are under a reasonable amount of pressure at the moment, and so for us is trying to get things sorted out as quickly as possible. I think there's a lot of posturing between the different groups, between PRL and the French clubs, and ERC and whatever. So, but when it comes down to it, it's all about control, isn't it? And probably the bottom line, it's all about who controls the money and where the money goes. But for all of us, it's about potentially protecting Europe. I think conscious of making sure we've got representation from all 6 nations as well, because potentially a minimum of at least one Scottish team, one Italian team, because if they don't have involvement, then I think that may have a knock-on effect for the 6 nations in a long-term capacity, and we want to make sure that tournament's as strong as it possibly can be too.
And just quickly from you, Simon, I know you've been following this from the office, that long-running saga. Did you feel the end game is nigh?
It does seem that people are talking a bit more. Things seem to be going on behind the scenes. I mean, but I've always said from day one, John, we've been here before, that the television deal seems to be the biggest stumbling block. When you've got 2 conflicting television deals in operation, that has to be resolved. I think if that can be resolved, all the other things can be sorted. I haven't really heard yet a cogent way, and that's going to be sorted. And I haven't heard a proper answer to Warren's question in the week, but who's going to referee the thing, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, no, the other thing. I was surprised that the regions came out yesterday and declared their hand, because I didn't think that they needed to do that, at the stage. I thought they could, keep their cards close to their chest and just wait and see how the discussions were going before they went out there and supported one competition or the other. So they've come out and have done that, and I presume that's their prerogative. But I was surprised that they did that at this time, rather than potentially wait and see what maybe the Scottish, the Italian, or the Irish reaction was going to be. So whether they've come under a little bit of pressure from PRL or something like that, or been offered something behind the scenes, you don't know the answer to those questions. But like I say, I was genuinely surprised about their announcement yesterday.
As you said, since you've been here, there's never quite been harmony.
No, and it would be nice to see that happen at some stage, where we're all working towards the same goal, and that's about Wales being strong in rugby, whether it's just the national team or the regional teams. And but will that ever happen? I don't know, but it's a dream, isn't it? So it's
Okay, we're almost coming to the end. A couple of really quick ones. Ali, talking about the autumn, what would you class as a successful autumn campaign for Wales? How many wins and against who?
Well, we did do too well last year, so maybe just one better than the last autumn would be nice. But look, I said before, it's imperative that we start thinking about competing and dominating at this level, and we're playing at home, and so. I think for all of us, you'd like to win all of the games, but 3 out of 4 of those games, I think would be, hopefully a reasonable reflection of a successful autumn campaign. And we've got a couple of key players that are injured at the moment, and that always has an impact, because we are lucky, and I think we just spoke about players going overseas, whether to England or to France, and I think we're under an enormous amount of threat from that at the moment, because I think it's not because we have international players, but I think we've got a group of world-class players, and we should be thankful for that. But I think there's half a dozen of our players that are good enough to make most sides in the world, and that puts a certain amount of pressure on the team from external pressure. But I think internally it means that we've got to start putting pressure on ourselves to perform and get results.
Okay, just finally then, two on the same theme. Dave quickly saying, Warren, if you had to pick between the All Blacks job post-World Cup and the Lions job in 2017, which would you go for? And another one saying, will you be signing a new contract for after the World Cup? I know you've had initial discussions apparently with Roger Lewis. What's your thinking on that situation?
Look, to be honest, if the opportunity arose, I'd love to do the Lions again, but that's solely, people have asked me about that, and I think the answer to that has been solely dependent on Wales over the next couple of years. If Wales perform and are successful, then I think it gives me potentially a chance to be asked again. And if Wales are crap and we don't perform well, then the Lions aren't going to ask me. So I think that's the answer to that question is easy, for Wales to hopefully continue to be successful over the next couple of years and and maybe, you know, towards the World Cup, and then maybe that, you know, I may get that opportunity again. You know, I'd love to.
Would you not still need to be coaching in Wales post World Cup to get that lodged? That's the key to it.
No, I think at the moment, like I said, I've sat down with Roger, and there's a potentially a group of players coming through at the moment that, you know, you'd like to be involved with for the next 4 years, you know, 2 to 3 or 4 years or whatever. So and when you've been part of that, I know the regions have been part of that development, and when you've also been part of that development, I think every now and again a generation of players come through that, you know, could just do something pretty special. And I think at the moment, fingers crossed, we may have that opportunity. We've got a group of players in the early 20s, mid-20s that, you know, as they mature and get better and more experience, I think they're only going to get better. And I would like to think that, you know, between the next 2 to 4 years, that even 6 years, apart from perhaps Adam Jones, Mike Phillips, Gatland Jenkins, there's a group of players, a squad of players that are potentially going to be around for the next 4 to 6 years. And I think from that point of view, from a national point of view, it's pretty exciting to be a part of that for Wales. And when you see that talent, you don't want to give it up or walk away from it and give it to someone else. So that's the selfish part of me, wanting to be involved. And but yeah, we'll just see what happens. And
is there a time scale on when you need to commit or not commit to?
Well, I haven't. Well, I'd like to see something in front of me. So you know, we've just had a general chat at the moment. I've been incredibly lucky. I've really enjoyed my time here in the last nearly 6 years. Actually, I mean, I can. When I first signed my contract, I was in London, and I can tell you honestly, my heart was pumping, and my hand was shaking, and I was thinking, what am I doing going to Wales? Am I doing the right thing? You know, because, you know, after the World Cup in 2007, and you know, I wasn't quite sure, and I thought, you know, it's a 4-year contract, and so I arrived here in December, and I can remember after the first month walking out on the balcony of my apartment and going, well, you know, that's 1 out of 48 gone. Thinking, you know, but I can say that, you know, from that initial sort of thoughts, and that I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here, and it's been special. Made some great friends, always challenged by the Welsh public, and I respect that. I don't mind that, because everyone talks about one of the 3 million selectors, but everyone deserves the right, or the right to their opinion, and I don't have any problem with people. Like I said, you know, selection is just a matter of opinion. That's all it is. And people disagree with myself or the other coaches, then that's their prerogative, and that's what makes sport, and it's what makes living in Wales interesting too.
Okay, Warren, thanks for your time.
Cheers,
much appreciated. Cheers. Simon, thank you for all your questions. Remember, tickets for those autumn internationals still available at the WRU's website, and of course we'll have all the best coverage here on Walesonline. See you next time.